Mr. Swirl, the internet's most disturbed user, by Nick Crowley. I've seen a few of his videos. I've seen this thumbnail float around every now and again. I'm very excited to see what this is. And if 4chan's involved or not.
Pattaya, Thailand. Two young brothers enter a local internet cafe, take their seats, and begin playing their favorite games. One boy was 13, and the other just 8. And together, they sat there and played the way they always did, getting lost in their screens, wasting the day away, until one of the boys felt a tap on his shoulder. Standing there beside them was a similarly aged child, a stranger to the boys, but a friendly one who strikes up a conversation and eventually poses an offer. According to the unnamed child, he had a friend who lived close by that owned a special computer, one far better than the device they were currently using, and one that had any game you could ever dream of playing. And he was headed to that friend's home right now, but he didn't want to go alone. It was an offer that the boys just couldn't refuse, and considering the child was clearly around their age, they saw no red flags and agreed to go with him, following the boy to a nearby apartment building, then up 7 flights of stairs, and into a dark room.
That's such a hard one, though, especially because, I mean, children are going to be impressionable. Like, that's such a hard one to try to disarm, especially if this is someone, an adult with malicious intent, using a child as a front to be able to report other children. This is a very special subsection of awful.
But waiting for them inside that room wasn't some sort of supercharged computer, and it surely wasn't a friend of the boys. And instead, it was a monster in every sense of the word. A depraved soul who, years down the line, would go on to become one of the most notorious predators ever to walk this earth.
Never heard of them.
Known only at the time as Mr. Swirl.
Okay.
And these children had just fallen into his trap.
Yeah. Appreciate the flash warning.
So, now at the heart of a global manhunt. Repeated abuse of a dozen or more underage computer software to obscure his own face in the picture.
I do like this. I do like the disclosures. The legal disclosure, not even legal disclosure. I like the disclosures because this is going to be a really heavy one. I can already tell. This is going to be. As I said, I like doing videos like this because, one, I get to see cool people like Nick Crowley, but it also is a way to engage with things in a safe environment. And when I say engage, like whether it's horror stories, true crime, etc., you're able to engage with the material in a safe capacity, and you're able to kind of draw conclusions, wisdom, information from it to help augment your ability to live, right? Thus red flags, thus the depths of depravity people can go to, that way you can protect yourself and others.
Hey guys, I just wanted to announce that I'm currently working on 2 collaborative projects with my good friend Nexpo, aka Ryan. Together we made this channel called Nick and Ryan, where we travel to some of the most haunted locations in the United States to try and see if we can go from being skeptics to believers, which we're already 3 episodes in and things have gone completely off the rails, but I can honestly say it's some of the most fun I've ever had creating. So hopefully it'll be just as fun for you guys as well, and a nice break from this disturbing content over here. And also we've been working on an ARG/clothing line called Liminal Land, which has been an amazing passion project for the both of us, and we're already cultivating such a unique and creative fan base over there, which has been super cool and super inspiring. So I'll leave a link below both to liminalland.net as well as the new Nick and Ryan channel. I would love it if you went and gave both of them a try, but if not, absolutely no worries, because this channel is not going anywhere. Okay, back to the disturbing video.
I liked it. I really liked how quick and concise that was, and I always love hearing about people's other projects and stuff. I think it's one of those I might eventually go actual vlog status. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be like group urbex content, if that's going to be, I don't know. I feel like I could go vlog status at some point. And it's very cool to see how different people tackle the same things. I think as well, when you get into ghost hunting content, I think that having a well-established brand rapport and be seen as a pretty cool guy, pretty chill guy, not someone who's going to try to pull the wool over your eyes. I think that definitely helps in a field like that.
It's unclear if they knew what they were looking for, or if they had just happened upon it by pure chance. But in 2004, German police entered a long-forgotten storage unit, where beneath the piles of junk and old appliances, they'd unearth a single hard drive.
Oh no.
Once plugged into the computer, the device revealed hundreds of images, some showing various locations, breathtaking scenery, delicious meals, and CP. The images showed scenes of depraved sexual abuse being done to individuals who were clearly minors, with this abuse being far worse than you'd ever imagine. And it wasn't just one child either, as across that hard drive seemed to be evidence of multiple separate instances of abuse, including images of 3 young boys taken in a dark apartment building.
I know that there was, I don't remember what video it was. It was, I guess, like, you know, alleged things that happened to people, right? True accounts, etc. There was a video that was talking about it was some dude in Australia, and he was just out on he had a lot of property, but he ended up finding like a storage container on his property, and he investigated it, and there was a lot of that material that the video is currently discussing. And thus, like, what do you do with a find like that? Thus trying to call authorities, but then the unit itself goes up in flames. Now, obviously, this is all alleged. I have no ability to confirm or deny anything that happened. This is just a story that I heard on YouTube. But it makes you wonder how criminals are able to just distribute stuff like this. And it might not even be as complex and elaborate as, setting up a secret server in a storage container in some backwater section of the world, being able to distribute and store information. It could just be that you just have to know a person that's available on the surface web. And I think that's the terrifying part about that, or about these things, is that this stuff still does go around. This stuff still does circulate. And I think that, when we start talking about, like the red rooms on the dark web, which, as far as we've all concerned, that's just kind of a myth. At least Muda Harfsnorda Gamers has done research into it, and it feels like a lot of these are myths. It could be Occam's razor. It could be the simplest solution is what the actual solution is.
The discovery was horrid, though sadly all in a day's work for investigators who encountered things of this nature on a daily basis, and it's a discovery that likely would have never been discussed by the media after that one day had it not been for one unusual detail. Typically, in cases involving CP, those taking the photographs and performing the actual abuse will almost always go out of their way to ensure that they aren't shown on camera.
Right.
That way, if authorities should stumble upon it, they would essentially be unidentifiable. However, the dozens of photos found on this particular hard drive were different. Because rather than hiding just out of frame like all the other predators seemed to do, the man behind these images had instead gone out of his way to ensure he was featured within them, shamelessly inserting himself into every single picture, even posing for them, before, during, and after he had changed the lives of these kids forever. And although his entire body was shown in these photographs, the only thing hiding his identity was the addition of a single effect, one that swirled the man's
swirl.
face into a distorted, pixelated mess, making him completely unrecognizable, and leaving his face to look like this.
Yep. That's unfortunately very crafty and clever. That is very bold. And I cannot wait for this man to absolutely just slammed.
There was something so disturbingly arrogant about it.
Yes,
a man
arrogant.
posing with his victims while destroying their lives, hiding behind only a single swirl of color, almost as if he was taunting any investigators who might eventually find these images. And given the clear indications that this man was obviously a serial abuser, and likely still out there offending, tracking this anonymous figure down became priority 1 for law enforcement in the area. And it's there that he would be given his nickname, Mr. Swirl. And with the swirl being the only thing standing in the way of investigators getting to see his face, most would have assumed that identifying him would be a walk in the park.
You would assume.
However, this was far from the case. As the images began to be dissected, it quickly became apparent that deciphering the sensor was going to be far more difficult than initially thought.
I mean, and that's the thing, is that to me, as somebody with absolutely no graphic design experience, this looks very like, oh, this looks simple, like you could just undo it. But I don't know. I don't know how you would crack something like this. Like, I mean, is it as simple as finding the cipher, the way to undo it? I don't know. I don't know graphic design wise how something like this could be reverse engineered. That is some tech wizardry that I do not know how to really dissect this. This is very vain. This is very bold. This is brash. This is very arrogant and overconfident from this person to use such a simplistic effect.
And potentially even impossible, as the pixels had been scrambled in such a unique way that there wasn't any known method to unscramble it. And quickly, what should have been their most valuable clue, the one that stood so tantalizingly close, became a lost cause, leaving investigators at their first dead end. Realizing that things were about to get much more difficult, the German police enlisted the help of an agency known as Interpol, an international crime-stopping organization with a special unit dedicated to resolving crimes against children.
Good.
Interpol immediately began to get to work, attempting to decipher the photos in a different way, this time by using context clues in the pictures to track down where exactly they were taken, which in turn could tell them where this man was from. And
this is like some Smash the Stone level, like triangulating bushes to figure out where the slab is buried.
Where the abuse was taking place. But this too unearthed yet another problem. The first batch of images was discovered to have come from Cambodia, but the next showed evidence that the man was in Vietnam, and then in Thailand, and potentially even South Korea as well. Rather than gaining clarity, the locations of these images instead made the search even wider, as the man was seemingly traveling from country to country, committing his crimes and then fleeing, thus never staying long enough for law enforcement to catch up with him, making it completely unclear to investigators where he was actually from. And given just how vast his travels were, at this point, it was realized that Mr. Swirl could be anywhere, a moving target, so to speak, and an active one as well. During the investigation, which would later be dubbed Operation Vico, in reference to Vietnam and Cambodia, which seemed to be the main sites of his abuse, investigators made a disturbing discovery: that Mr. Swirl's photographs were not exclusive to just that hard drive, as photo after photo began to appear on various online forums, with all of them featuring that disturbed, swirling face. The images were shared across the web seemingly straight from the man himself, and were sent out to various predatory groups that were filled with individuals just as sick as he was. Within these groups, it was considered a badge of honor to show your body and face within the content you made, thus leading to the sender becoming well respected among his peers, which showed us two things. One, that this was likely the reason why Mr. Swirl inserted himself in these photos, as it had led to him becoming a beloved member of their twisted community, in turn granting him access to all the CP he could want. And two,
I think things like this are so hard to tackle, and I think that a lot of these communities ends up being super insular. What's the online allegation? If you have a dog paw print tattoo or something like that, allegedly it's supposed to mean certain things. There's some weirdness on the internet from what I understand. That's why I appreciate people who, talk about things like this and go through things like this. Should everyone have knowledge of this? I feel that, it's one of those that it depends on what each individual person can handle. I think that as long as enough people know about certain things, it helps. It helps just make better understanding for others and protecting others. I feel communities like this would be rife with law enforcement trying to break into them, right? Like the whole meme of like, that's a Fed, right? I feel like they'd be rife with that. But I feel like if you dive into something like this, it would be a matter of earning respect of the community. And then on top of that, by earning respect in the community, you yourself are incriminating yourself to be able to be welcomed in the community. And I think like I guess like organized crime status, right? Like to be part of the quote unquote family, you got to go take care, quote unquote, of somebody. You got to make sure that you earn, quote unquote, your way. I think that is a terrifying thought about the organization behind some of this.
that the images found on the hard drive did not account for his whole body of work, as in these chat rooms and forums, police would find far more photos featuring their suspect, raising the total from a few dozen to nearly 300. By this point, Mr. Swirl had been untraceable. Authorities were essentially searching for a ghost, and though these new images must have felt like a gut punch at first, they would eventually prove to be integral to their investigation, as for the first time in their hunt, Mr. Swirl had made a key error. Within these postings, Mr. Swirl had forgotten to hide his IP address, in turn revealing the general area in which they had been sent, with the location being Vancouver, Canada. This break revealed the key detail that he had some sort of tie to Vancouver, and that he was likely a sex tourist, someone who travels to countries that have loose laws around their age of consent in order to be able to abuse children without any repercussions, with Mr. Swirl clearly doing the same thing, visiting multiple countries in Asia, making his material, coming home and then sharing it with his friends. It certainly didn't solve the case, but it was finally a step in the right direction. And unbeknownst to the team working on Operation Vico, they were quickly approaching an even bigger revelation. As authorities were working hard on pinning down Mr. Swirl's location, some members of the team held on hope that the images themselves could still be unscrambled, and upon digging a bit deeper, one member of the team would actually recognize the swirl as having come from a fairly standard editing program, which revealed something. The swirl effect wasn't like a typical sensor or blur. Those effects completely mask or even remove the pixels from the actual photograph, making them nearly impossible to decipher. But this effect did neither of those things, and instead it simply rearranged the pixels of the man's face.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, it feels like everything is rearranged. So, I mean, cipher is probably not the correct word there, but you would be able to unscramble it, right?
To a swirling pattern, meaning that this image still contained all of its original pixels, and Mr. Swirl's face was somewhere in this picture. They just had to piece it together. And so, in what must have felt like a Hail Mary at the time, an investigator put one of the images into that very same editing software, then clicked that very same swirl effect, and simply reversed it. Which in turn led to this. In an investigation that started all the way back in 2004, finally, Mr. Swirl's face was revealed with a single click, a whole—
That is so wild how easily that was undone.
3 years later, confirming not only what the man looked like, but also that it was truly just one man behind the swirl. And now, all they had to do was find him. Interpol first started their search by sending this man's image to every single police station the network had access to, asking if anyone across the world had a criminal in their database who might match this photo, but this attempt would fall flat, indicating that whoever this man was, he likely had no prior criminal record. Time was clearly of the essence, and they knew that with every waking moment, Mr. Swirl could be adding to his list of growing victims. And wanting to act fast, Interpol made a fairly unprecedented decision. They reached out to every single major news outlet across the world and asked them to show this man's face on their broadcast to help bring this predator to justice. Additionally, the images of Mr. Swirl's face were also plastered in all corners of the internet, and within just one day, the story was quite literally everywhere. What started as a small search for an anonymous man had become an international manhunt overnight, and within just hours, Mr. Swirl would be anonymous no more.
And he's got a timer.
Top news story this hour. The worldwide search for a suspected pedophile is concentrated in Thailand this morning. We now know the suspect is a Canadian. The CBC's Michael McAuliffe reports from Bangkok.
This morning, Interpol announced they now believe they know who the man is. He's been identified as a Canadian, 32-year-old Christopher Paul Neal.
His name is Christopher Paul Neal. Not only did Neal's face and body match perfectly with Mr. Swirl, but he also had grown up just outside of Vancouver where the IP was tracked to.
Yikes.
He had moved from country to country across Asia in recent years, countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and Thailand. The resemblance was so undeniable that even one of his own family members came forward to help identify him. Christopher Neal was in fact Mr. Swirl, a discovery that came with some disturbing revelations. As it turns out, Christopher Neil was actually working as a children's English teacher, a job he had held in each of the countries he was discovered to have abused young boys in, making it likely that he used this position of power to lure in children from his classes to eventually abuse them and share.
Can we just not? Can we not? Like, don't get me wrong, okay? Like, I am John Single Dude, right? There is such a leap in logic to do something like this. There is such a... That is so far removed that it's wild to me.
Their photos online. Along with this, it was also revealed that he had used his relationships with young boys to help lure in other children for him to assault. As looking back on the story that started this video, he had recruited a clueless child he knew to lure those two brothers back to his apartment. This discovery also shined a spotlight on his social media pages, and specifically his MySpace page, where he chillingly wrote, "Loving Asia, will I ever come back?" while in the midst of his abuse spree. But for me, one of the most shocking revelations was that those images that he had posted during the investigation weren't actually posted to his computer. At some point in the early 2000s, Neil had stopped home for a brief vacation to visit his family, and while there, he decided to upload all of his CP to his internet friends. But rather than using his personal device or a public computer, he instead broke into his own brother's laptop and uploaded his content there.
That is the fastest way for your family to throw you in the wood chipper. That is... Wow. Because that could also implicate the brother. That's... What a coward.
That way, the images would be tracked to his brother and not him, which explained why he never bothered to hide his IP address. The more they learned, the more disturbed the story became, as even at the time they discovered his identity, it was revealed that he had currently been working in South Korea as a teacher. But when the officers arrived to arrest the man, he was already long gone. Having certainly seen his face all over the news, Christopher made the decision to flee the country, being spotted in this image captured at an airport in Thailand, as he had flown to the country likely in an attempt to find refuge. Throughout the
I don't know what it is. There's something about eyes I've noticed. Like, if you look at his eyes and other people's eyes as well, and it might be the picture, it might be the contrast, it might be the lighting. I feel like seeing the whites of people's eyes in this way, I don't know. There's something about it. I can't put my finger on it. And I don't think it's anything like damning, right? Like if you walk out, there's a certain wild look about it that I can't quite. There's no soul. I guess. I don't know. There's something there that I can't quite put my finger on.
Following days and weeks, his likeness would turn up time and time again in the country, indicating that he was somewhere in Thailand hiding out. And having cornered him in the region, it wouldn't take long for police to knock on the door of an abandoned house in the middle of nowhere, in which Christopher Neil happened to be hiding, bringing the multi-year search for Mr. Swirl to an end. Following his arrest by Thai police.
Why are they complicit? Why are they complying with him trying to hide his face? Or are they... No, because that's him hiding his face. Why? I don't know. I think that gets into due process, and I think that gets into not necessarily rights, but respecting the individual, right? I don't know. I feel like and I guess that's the double-edged sword of due process, right? Because on one hand, like, no, if this person clearly did this, why are we even remotely trying to protect this person? But on the other hand, it still does have to go through the process. You have to go through the process. You have to go through, the court finding guilt, etc. Right? Even how open and shut it can seem. So that's a weird one to think about.
Police, Neil will be charged for his assault on those 3 young boys from the internet cafe, as it was the only crime they could prove had taken place in their country, and with it carried a prison sentence of 5 years. Admittedly, the sentencing was light, But the plan was to have Neil turned over to Canadian authorities after he did his time in Thailand, where they would also prosecute him all over again, with the hope being that they could do the same thing with countries like Cambodia and Vietnam, and essentially force him to live out his life in prison.
Right, they're going to play hot potato, what sentences they can get off on, therefore keeping him in prison. This feels like it's one of the only moves that they realistically have, though.
However, when the sentence was completed in 2012, and Christopher was deported back to Canada, the shocking decision was made to allow Christopher Neil to walk free.
What?
When Neil was detained in Canada, authorities let him walk under the condition that he would never own a device that connected to the internet again, as well as the agreement that
how can you enforce that? What?
he would stay away from parks, schools, and also register as a sex offender. I can't for the life of me understand why this decision was made, but from what I could gather, it seemed to center around the fact that his crimes were international, and that none of his other victims had actually come forward, meaning the other countries they had hoped would prosecute never actually bothered to pursue it. And because his
Oh, I hate that tracks. Because that relies on everybody showing up to the decision-making table to show up and keep the process going. That's wild. I mean, look, I know chat's like Canada ? I'm sure there's stuff like this that goes on in the US too. This is insane.
crimes didn't happen on Canadian soil, not much could really be done legally speaking. And so in the end, the hunt for Mr. Swirl ended up lasting almost as long as the sentence he served. And even after everything this man did, he was let loose and allowed to assimilate back into society. But this isn't where our story ends.
Okay, I'm ready.
Not even a full year later in 2013, it would be uncovered that Christopher Neil had somehow managed to purchase a computer, and also connected to—
No way! Who would have thought? So the other thing that in other countries, the other thing that pairs with prison time is rehabilitation time. Now, if we want to talk about it from what I understand is in a scientific standpoint, I think there are certain crimes that cannot be rehabilitated. I am by far the furthest person to be able to commentate on that and what is actually, but what is and what isn't. But I mean, reasonably, if it's just like, yeah, we just let the dude go. One, it makes me think, did he know somebody? Did he know somebody who was one of his online friends? The decision as well to let him walk will serve nothing but to embolden people in communities who do this and share this material online, because clearly this communicates there are no consequences. Who would have thought that something as deep as this and something as just especially without any follow-up, it seems, any therapy, and you're good to go. Who would have thought that there would be a relapse? Who would have thought that there'd be the ability to purchase something like this?
The internet, a clear violation of his conditions. And though he claimed it was just for writing a book about his life experiences, when investigators seized the device, they would, unsurprisingly, find even more CP. 25 images to be exact, including 2 with his signature swirling face.
More than enough.
As it turns out, Christopher had been using the device to contact his fellow pedophile friends, where he would even message one of his disturbed friends right after his release, saying, "The swirl liveth still."
Wow.
Proving without a shadow of a doubt that he was remorseless about his crime, and took pride in his new nickname. And somehow, the discovery got even worse from there, as it was revealed that a friend of his had shown him how to access the deep web, and how to share these photographs in practically an untraceable way, thus allowing him to continue being active in these predatory groups, no matter what restrictions were placed on him.
Wow, Gratz, now you have just made the person have to educate himself in order to continue to do the thing, but now in a more problematic way.
After Canadian police made this discovery, Christopher would yet again be arrested, and this time they had the chance to really send a message and put him away forever, as clearly letting him walk away the first time was a mistake, as he wasn't reformed even in the slightest. And so, to make up for this, the judge would give Christopher Neal the whopping sentence of just 5.5 years, with time served, meaning that he would only end up in jail for a little over 14 months. The prosecution praised the sentence as a win, and Christopher vowed to change his ways, but it just doesn't sit right that as of 2016, Mr. Swirl, the man responsible for dozens and dozens of instances of extreme child abuse, which by the way are just the ones that we know of, is a free man. Now,
dude, that's wild. This is why, like, in what was it? The one of the other videos we reacted to recently where, you know, something BlackRock members, something pardon. It's like, I don't think you understand that while legally you're pardoned, the court of public opinion may still have an opinion about you. So, well, but I served, Mr. Swirl, right? Served his time, right? He's clearly going to, he will reform his ways. Sure. Legally, punishments have been doled out. From the court of public opinion, you're lucky you're not in a wood chipper, for all intents and purposes.
Living a normal life in Vancouver. And worst of all, he now has access to share this material through untraceable avenues, meaning that there is a good chance that he could still be out there obtaining, sharing, and who knows, maybe even producing his content.
Yeah.
The case of Mr. Swirl is such a frustrating one. For once, a case of this nature gained worldwide attention and was pursued by the full extent of the law, with the folks over at Interpol doing a fantastic job with the case, only for it all to be deflated once he was finally captured. And just knowing that he's out there living a normal life after all this, after all the lives that he's forever affected, makes this one of the most disheartening cases we've covered to date.
Yeah, I was not expecting. That's depressing. That is an absolute disservice. This just serves to reinforce the behavior online. This just serves to reinforce individuals because they know there are no consequences. And that's I think depressing. But I digress. I didn't know of this case going into this. Thank you, Nick Crowley, for a very educational video on the subject. I think this was handled very professionally. I think this was handled in a very proper way, content matter considered. Yeah, this is definitely something that wild for sure. Let's put it that way. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Please, I know that this is going to be a very heavy topic, but please be civil in the comment section. I know most everyone is, and I appreciate that from you guys. I'll see you in the next one.